Hello, my name is Stacey Alex, and I'm very happy to talk with you today about the work we're doing with community engagement at Morningside College in Sioux City, Iowa. We're right in the heart of what we call Siouxland, and our title today is Spreading the Word in Siouxland, Disaster Relief and Immigrant Services. I'm very sorry that we won't be sharing space together this year. And I'm also sorry that my two undergraduate students, Mckenzie Bennett and Jemar Lee, are not able to participate at this time, but I do want to take the time to talk about their very important work and accomplishments this year. So today I'm going to overview, first of all, what community engagement and project-based learning courses looks like here in Morningside College. I'm going to talk first about Project Siouxland, which is actually run by some colleagues of mine. And then I'm going to talk to you about my course called Spanish for Leadership in the Professions. Specifically, I'll talk to you about how institutional structures can facilitate or limit learning, and how community engagement expands students' understanding of diverse populations and their plans to impact the public good as future professionals. And then for the second part of our presentation today, I'm going to discuss institutional support for engagement here at Morningside College and kind of point to plans for our future. In the interest of defining terms, let's start out with what I mean by this word Siouxland. I'm originally from Des Moines, so I'm just recently learning about this term. It refers to this tri-state area of South Dakota, Iowa, and Nebraska. And Siouxland is a vernacular region, meaning it crosses political borders and is more of an imagined space, based on people who live here feeling a kind of collective identity due to a shared history or shared interests. I use this term because the students that I work with in both Project Siouxland and in my Spanish for the Professions course are really thinking about how to serve populations that live across this tri-state area. Now I'm going to give you some background on a new initiative we have here at Morningside College called Project Siouxland. We're very excited because it's in its first year, just completed its first year here. And the tagline for this course is Projects are the class and Siouxland is the classroom. So you can see that community engagement and project-based learning are at the forefront for this class. And it's an exciting partnership between Morningside College and WIT, which is shorthand for Western Iowa Tech Community College. And professors from both of our institutions work with nonprofit, public, and community-based organizations throughout the Siouxland area. And now this isn't my course, so if you have any specific questions, please, I know that Kim Christofferson would be happy to talk with you. And she's our Associate Professor of Graduate Education and Educational Technologist here at Morningside. She works with Liz Shika, who's the director of Project Siouxland and works at Western Iowa Tech Community College. And Liz Shika actually developed a similar project first in high schools in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And on her website about Project Siouxland, she describes the course with this quote here that I'll let you read on your own. But you'll see that the public good is very much at the forefront of this initiative. The first student that I worked with to prepare today's presentation is Jemar Lee, and he's featured here in the center of this photo. He actually met Liz Shika in Cedar Rapids as a high school student and worked with her in an initiative called Iowa Big, and that she has now continued here in Sioux City as Project Siouxland. Jemar is a huge advocate for this kind of project-based learning and shared with me that he feels that community and civic engagement have been critical for his success in college, and that this kind of project allows students access to sources of capital that they might otherwise not have access to. The course is structured in the following way. Students work on a project together at the beginning of the course to model what the rest of the class is going to look like. And in this case, students created a questionnaire for Art Splash, which is the major fundraising opportunity for our local art museum here. And then after that model, students hear pitches from a variety of nonprofit organizations in the community that would like students to help organize an initiative for them. After students listen to these pitches, they pick their top 3 choices and are assigned one of those choices by the instructor. And students, of course, have the autonomy to leave the project if they find that there's not a reciprocal interest between them and the nonprofit. Jemar ended up in a group that designed a public service announcement for United Way. Jemar described the process to me and explained that organizing amongst themselves and creating a team charter in which each student had their own responsibilities was definitely a life skill, right, to understanding team dynamics, and will serve him in the future. And it was really important that he had this opportunity to communicate with the nonprofit without any sort of liaison, right? The instructor was not dictating how communication happened between students and the nonprofits. Jemar also described gaining important critical thinking skills as students had to work with many moving parts, streamline the process, and make sure everyone was on the same page, including partners and even third parties. Also, one of the exciting things that I heard from Jemar was that he was learning about the diverse communities that we are serving here in Siouxland. And he had to think about how the message of this public service announcement was going to resonate with all of these different communities for this tri-state area. Crucially, Jemar learned about unconscious bias and thought about how he needed to highlight areas outside of the Morningside community, right, which is just a very small part of this area, right? And think about the connotation of voice and language that was going to be used. So in addition to learning some project management skills, Jemar also was given the opportunity to reflect on his own purpose and also the impact on the community and the greater good of the community that would be reflected in the final product. I also want to mention that Jemar's public service announcement for United Way was about disaster relief and helping the public know about the different kinds of relief available in the area. And my reaction to his description was very telling. I said, "Oh, so you mean flooding?" And he had to educate me, right, about the wide variety of disasters that people in our community face and the importance of educating the public about those issues. Now I'm going to talk about my own Spanish course, which is called Communication for Leadership in the Professions. And I based this course off of a model created by my good friend and mentor, Elena Fowles, who works at The Ohio State University. And she really opened my eyes to the field of engagement scholarship in general. She invited me to the 2018 Engagement Scholarship Consortium in Minneapolis. And it was there that I received kind of a crash course on the history of community engagement movement and the context of the field today, as well as best practices. And Laura Lee R. Sandman from the University of Georgia and Audrey Jager from North Carolina State gave a really great introduction, in which I was encouraged to think about how those who are most affected by community engagement projects should be at the heart of the process from the very beginning of a project, right? And so I started to think about building reciprocal relationships with community partners in ways that move beyond this idea of outreach, right? So for that reason, I try to make sure that my students understand what an asset our partners are, and that they are going to learn just as much, if not more, from community partners as we are going to be able to contribute to them. So in this course, it's a third year level course in which students are introduced to professional contexts, right? So some vocabulary and grammar specific to a number of fields, including health, finance, community, policing, housing, and human resources. But in addition to those subtopics, I also want to make sure that students have a general idea of key issues that affect our Latino communities here in the Midwest, but also nationally, including immigration, discrimination, and so forth. And I had the great opportunity to develop some relationships with community partners here in my first year, including the Sioux City Public Museum, the Sioux City Community School District, Morningside Lutheran Preschool, as well as the Mary J. Trelia Community House. which is an immigrant-serving nonprofit. And in addition to having students work very closely with those organizations throughout the semester, I also invited speakers in from other groups that work with Spanish-speaking communities, such as U.S. Bank, Tyson Foods, and the Sioux City Police Department. And we gained a great deal of perspective from hearing from them and being able to ask them questions about their work. My student who worked with me on today's presentation is Mckenzie Bennett. And she was part of my Spanish for the Professions course in the fall. And I really enjoyed hearing her perspective on the course. She said that she had never taken a class before that had expected her to make kind of the first move, right? I didn't establish connections for students beforehand in terms of their projects. I had communicated with all of these nonprofits and let them know we were interested in working together, but I didn't facilitate communication in terms of introductions. So Kiki said that she really got a lot out of having to be responsible in terms of communication and developing a professional tone in emails and introducing herself. Like Jemar, Kiki said she learned quite a bit about diversity and inclusion, and that as a student who came from a predominantly white neighborhood, that this was an eye-opening experience in terms of learning about what immigrants face on a daily basis and the kinds of support that may be available to them, but also the challenges, right? And one thing that we talk about in class is this concept of confianza, which is trust, right? And learning to recognize cultural differences, right? But also that trust has been historically betrayed, right? And so there is a need to earn trust and to understand what trust looks like in other cultures. Kiki learned that showing up on a weekly basis, right, and establishing personal connections with the people who used the services at Mary J. Traylor Community House were crucial, right, to her work. During her time at Mary Traylor, Kiki was able to translate some legal documents. She was also able to work at the front desk and use her oral Spanish skills. And she translated also some English to Spanish documents, providing an overview of the kind of services available for Spanish speakers. Kiki learned some great lessons on cultural variation within vocabulary. For example, she had learned in the past some terms that are common in Spain and had to be flexible and learn other terms that were more common with our Mexican and Central American populations. Another thing she mentioned that was quite eye-opening was this idea of a loteria, which is that in Mexico and other Central American communities, it's common to be able to go to kind of a notary for legal questions and help, which is very different, right, than what you are able to do legally here in the United States. And so some people here in the United States take advantage of immigrants by telling them they can help them with their immigration case, when in fact they don't have the kind of background to be able to do that. So Kiki had met several immigrants who had paid money to individuals who ended up not being able to advance their case. And this really changed Kiki's perspective, right, about the importance of these kinds of community houses and immigrant-serving organizations to build community and to build resources of information. And I'll just quickly mention that I'm really proud to hear that Kiki, even beyond our work together, has continued to work with Mary Traylor and talk to me about learning to build reciprocal relationships. She very much feels that she has learned a great deal from them and is grateful that she's been able to contribute something as well. She also shared that her plans for the future have changed due to this experience with this nonprofit, and she thought she was going to take some time off to travel, but has recognized that she is very much able to use her Spanish right here in Siouxland, and plans to pursue a career working with nonprofits in the future. Here's just an example of the final project that Kiki developed, which was a Spanish version of a brochure. for Mary J. Trillia Community House, and in addition to some other work that she did during the semester. In closing, I will briefly mention some institutional support for engagement that we have here at Morningside. Our institution's motto is that the Morningside College experience cultivates a passion for lifelong learning and a dedication to ethical leadership and civic responsibility. And we're very lucky to have Dr. Val Hennings here, the director of our Colonel Bud Day Center for Civic Engagement. And she organizes a number of initiatives, including visits from political candidates to a political poll that is organized and run by students every year. And she's brought together faculty from across programs to identify resources and support for civic responsibility and engagement. And one interesting thing that came up during one of those sessions was that many of us want to make sure that we're defining terms and that we have a common definition for civic responsibility, and that students are able to use that vocabulary and be able to showcase, right, what they are learning about civic responsibility and how that's going to affect their personal lives and professions in the future. Another thing that we discussed is wanting to make sure that both faculty and students have a chance to share their work, right, and build collaboration by talking about how their work intersects with civic responsibility and what they hope to be able to accomplish in the future. So thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please get in touch with me. My email is alexs@morningside.edu here at the bottom of the screen. Take care.